why I've purposely brought them in front of you. If you look at the studies which have been done over a period of time, it has been researched that women are capable of conducting precise and creative scientific research. They are capable as rational observers, interpreters, and discoverers of the order of and laws of nature. And they are even capable as inventors of new methods, techniques, and technologies. However, due to conditioning of their mind in a particular way, that they should only excel in music, fine arts, and performing arts, they have not got their other part of the brain developed right from the childhood. In fact, both men and women, they have similar brains, but it is only from the childhood that the development has not happened and we have not been able to excel in certain areas. The inherent skills of women scientists are such that they are inclined to pursue harmony and humanism, which has positive effects on goals and methodologies of scientific research, and therefore they are very sensitive to the environment. And when they are conducting a research, they are very good binders and team players. And therefore, because they are able to maintain harmony between man and nature. So you will find that there is a totally different approach to the research made by women scientists. They have got good networking skills, and that is why they make friends very easily, especially in the neighborhood. You will find that they will have a big group of friends. And they are also blessed with associative thinking in a very unique and special way, which provides new perspectives and approaches to multidisciplinary, systematic, and integrated scientific research. Their patience, carefulness, and cleverness enables them to be highly focused on research, helping them carry out experiments meticulously. Women also have good organizing skills and collaborative behavior, and therefore it is extremely helpful in promoting teamwork in scientific research and any other activity undertaken by them. In fact, many a times it is said that why they are so good at teamwork, because they do not have mustaches. They do not have mustaches, they do not have a huge ego to feed. And therefore, they are very, very collaborative in their behavior.
And some of us also do not have.
Yes. Yes, it is not a generalized statement. So,
women have long hair.
Women they have long hair, so they keep pulling each other's hair. Now you see, with the emergence of new economy and participation of women, earlier very few women got into science and technology related areas, and therefore when I was studying engineering at IIT Roorkee, out of a batch of 350 boys, there were just 5 girls. So you can see that very few women pursued engineering and technology. But now with the emergence of knowledge-based industries, participation of women has increased many folds. If you see that nowadays, the university that I am heading has around 1,500 students, 1,500 girl engineers who are pursuing engineering and technology in various branches of engineering, including mechanical engineering. We have 100% placement through campus with multiple job offers. Why? We have seen in the past couple of years that there has been a trend in hiring women engineers, and that has started because most of the Indian industries and MNCs, they have a skewed gender ratio. In healthcare industry, in education sector, in financial sector, already 50% of workforce is women workforce. But in the engineering sector, they used to be just 5 to 10% women. However, with the current hiring rate since the 1990s, the percentage of women employees in engineering and technology has risen and has become 25% almost. There has been a major drive in hiring women engineers to improve the gender diversity and gender inclusion among various MNCs and Indian industries. In fact, the IT industry has changed the perception about women, and they are considered to be the major contributors to the economy of the country as well, but at the same time to the bottom line of the company. Nowadays, companies prefer to come to our campus to hire women engineers because they find them highly productive, highly focused and highly knowledgeable. There is a gender gap study which has taken place and which is done every year. And this World Economic Forum study says that India ranks at 105 out of 135 nations in the Global Gender Gap Subindex, which is a very poor ranking in terms of gender gap, because out of the total workforce in India, which is 478 million, although we have just 115 million women who are women workers, forming 24% of the workforce. So as of now, we do have women workforce, but it is only 24%. And out of these 24%, only 5% women are in leadership position in India, whereas in other countries at the global level, 20% women, they reach the leadership position. So you can see for yourself that among such a huge gathering of vice chancellors, there is only one woman vice chancellor. So this study is right, because very few women reach the highest level of leadership position.
Andhra Pradesh statistics is 10% in terms of vice chancellors.
Oh. That's a good news. Most of the time, women, you will find that at the mid-management level, there are a number of women employees, but they either drop out due to certain family responsibilities, due to certain reasons, and therefore, at the end of the day, very few women reach the top level. But however, at the mid-management level, there are many women, almost 50% of workforces of women. There is a need for social transformation, which is one of the recommendations, and which is happening gradually in our country, although the pace of transformation is very slow. Many companies are now promoting women-friendly work culture, and they are creating enabling environment at workplace so that they get flexi timings, work from home options, and also sometimes they are allowed to take a career break and then absorbed at the same level. Our constitution is very liberal in the sense that we provide equal wages, equal rights, and equal opportunities to women employees. So that way, our country has had a very progressive constitution. But at the same time, the women are not able to reach the top level, top leadership position, because some point of time they feel that they have hit a glass ceiling despite being worthy of leadership roles. However, this myth of glass ceiling is shattering. It is not very, very common to see that women have stopped complaining nowadays about any glass ceiling, because women who are very good at their work, at their profession, and who work with passion, and who are able to strike a work-life balance, they forge ahead. If a woman exhibits enthusiasm, zeal and passion to be good at work, then people forget the gender bias and the glass ceiling shatters. So these days the glass ceiling no longer exists, and therefore you can see that the new HRD minister, Smriti Irani, has made these announcements on 3rd November that our NITs, the idea is to promote women entering into science and technology and taking engineering profession, and who are all girls. I always tell them that all the women professionals have to keep this message in their mind, which is the motto of my university, Apo Deepo Bhava, which means be a light unto yourself. The woman of today has to brighten up her own life through the pursuit of knowledge, acquisition of wisdom, leading towards self-discovery and enlightenment. Nobody is going to come and help her in rising above and in climbing the corporate ladder. It is her own capability, her own discovery, her own commitment which will take her forward. Thank you very much. This was a brief presentation on gender inclusion in the area of science and technology.
Situation exists in other universities, but at the University of Delhi, where in our formal courses of learning, we have more than 200,000 students.
Yes.
More than half are girls. So I think there is a statement there, and I believe this is the trend in the country.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I am saying. As far as studies in various generic courses is concerned, the enrollment is very high. It's more than 50%, I would say. But in engineering and technology, there is a great mental barrier among parents, among girls. They feel that they are incapable of becoming a competent engineer, whereas it is not true. So my main experience of the last 32 years of being in this academic profession is that women can make very good, competent engineers also, and they can make huge...
For rural children, last year 54% of those admitted were girls and 46 were boys. And before last year it is 50.1%.
That's why they say that that next century will belong to the women.
Prakash, I'll request Professor Prakash to be on dais for 1 minute, please. We need to give the mementos to all our speakers from the last session. As a session chair, I raise it, let's give a round of applause for them. We have Professor Rajendran P, Vice Chancellor, Kerala Agriculture University. Professor Ratna, Vice Chancellor, Dravid University. And Father Paul Fernandez, Vice Chancellor, Xavier's University. Fernandez, Vice Chancellor, Xavier's University. And I'll ask Mr. Fernandez to please give the memento to Mr. Prakash.
I got my vote to have 50% of the girls in management, but without the pressure code or anything.
Initiatives to boost employability. Now, education is not about earning degrees anymore. Till my time it was, but now it is not. It is also about skill development, upskilling and reskilling oneself for the job market. This issue is not only at individual level. In fact, it has gripped the imagination of policymakers. Universities and schools slowly. India has set a target of skilling 500 million people by 2020. Are skill development initiatives by government enough to boost the employability? That is the question. Are the universities ready to impart skills over conventional pedagogy? or do we need to create new institutions to meet the demands of global market? In the session, we delve into the way that both industry and universities are coping with the skilling issues at their end. So I first invite CP Kuni Mohammed, that is President JT Islam, to please give the presentation.
Well, I am presenting a paper on skill development initiatives to boost employability. Let me first of all give you a bird's eye view of the present situation of skilled labour market in our country. India is one of the emerging markets in the world. India has changed from an agrarian economy to an industrialized economy. It is lacking due to the shortage of skilled labour. According to a study on the skill development landscape in India and implementing quality skill training conducted recently, although the country has enough potential to deliver to the needs of the global talent market, the strong employability challenge of the graduates, especially engineering graduates, became the bottleneck for India's growth perspective, according to Talent Shortage Survey conducted in 2011. Even in India, which produces 400,000 plus engineers annually, corporations are finding it increasingly difficult to find the qualified workers they require. India's National Association of Software Services Companies, NASSCOM, estimated a potential shortfall of 500,000 technology professionals in 2011. There were several studies conducted in India to know the employability skills of the students. It is found that 75% of the Indian graduates are unemployable. There was an argument that this study does not give a clear picture of Indian graduates and it is outdated. But the recent study conducted at the World Bank points out that 64% of the employers say they are only somewhat satisfied with the performance of the engineering graduates in India. Globally, about 35% of the employers find it difficult to fill the talent gap, and in India, 67% of the employers find it difficult to find right talent from both arts and science graduates. These results point out that the need for proper awareness and training among the graduates to enhance their skills. However, if India is to fully harness her demographic divide, these skill development efforts need to be managed in a focused and coordinated manner. Currently, skill development efforts of Government of India are spread across approximately 20 separate ministries, 35 state governments and union territories, and the private sector. With this primary objective, National Skill Development Agency has set up a National Council on Skill Development with the following mandates to develop a strategy for skill development at the national level along with the variations at the state level. Map the gaps in the area of skill development and develop strategies to address the skill deficit. Identify new areas for employability and promote skill development in such sectors. Advise on remodeling the existing skill development programs run by various ministries. Promote greater use and information communications technology in the area of skill development. Develop and implement an action plan for skill development to maximize job generation within the country and create human resources for global needs. Provide guidance through the Prime Minister's National Council on Skill Development for activities to be undertaken by the center and the states and by the national skill development corporations. At state level, Kerala government has come up with ASAP scheme to equip its young population with skills in cutting edge sectors in order to effectively alleviate the unemployment problems in the state. The project combines both preventive approach and curative approaches. On the preventive side, the general and higher education departments together will implement this ASAP to amplify working hands in difficult sectors of the economy by providing additional skill sets to students along with their regular courses. In the curative part, ASCP, under the leadership of the Labour and Local Self-Government Department, is envisaged to encompass skill development and grooming initiative for unemployed persons registered in the employment exchanges across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for that insight. Thanks a lot. Now we have one more speaker here, Mr. Abdul Salam, Vice Chancellor, Calicut University. He'll be talking on our previous topic, that will be role of technology in redefining examination management. So I'll ask Mr. Abdul Kalam to be on the stage, please.
Respected Vice Chancellors and my dear E-Indians. Right from the day one when I received this invitation, I was looking at the word E-India. E-India. And as a Vice Chancellor, I was always looking at the word E. E is a word, that is changing the world. Very often we start from E world, then E India, maybe E state, E Kerala, E village, E district, E student, E citizen down. So everywhere E, and this E is going to create a revolution in the whole world. And if you look at it closely, I am of the opinion, of the feel that the whole development that you see around the world, let it be education or research or health or environment or development, anywhere, all related to E. So E is very important for us at E-Indians. And me as a Vice Chancellor of the University, I am looking at this E, this electronic, sometimes people call, as sister words, cyber or smart, cyber India or smart India or E-India or digital India. All these words are used, synonymously. As a Vice Chancellor, I am looking at it with a lot of anxiety and importance because I am the Vice Chancellor of one of the largest universities of the state. The state of Kerala is having 19 universities. And 4 traditional universities, the state of Kerala University, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kannur University and Calicut University together carry 90% of the higher education of the state. And among the universities, Calicut University is the largest and second oldest. And we have a great problem in this contest. I was listening to the Kerala Agriculture University and the women universities with number around 1,500 and 2,000. And my number is huge. That is my problem. I have a regular student strength of, spread over. Mine is an affiliated university. I will come down. Established in 68 in Malappuram with 212 hectares and 444 colleges and 3.1 lakh of regular students enrolled and another 4 lakh in supplementary. With 296 academic programs and 12,000 examinations per year. And with the teaching faculty 450, non-teaching 1744, total 2159 and 1600 pensioners. This is a low. And when I go to the colleges, the teacher number exceeds 10,000. Now this is the size of the university, spread over 5 districts, 42% of the states. For me, e-governance or digital governance or e-examination is of great significance. My struggle, I am completing 3 years, 2 months as Vice Chancellor there. And all the 3 years, my mission and vision was to transform the university to the best of my ability to a university. That is why I said towards an e-university. You know, I am basically an agricultural scientist, but I believed in technology. My first mission was to transform the university into a fully technology-driven e-university. We started introducing infrastructure network, but remember, this is very difficult for us to maintain the network. Then we have secured this connectivity, ICT connectivity network. Then we have transformed the whole campus into the Wi-Fi campus, 550 acres on the main center, and most of the affiliated colleges we made Wi-Fi. And then, you know, this again is very costly, you know, establishing and maintenance of server is a major constraint for every university. And again, more than 800 in-computing devices installed and trained all our people. And you know, there was a bottleneck in terms of, you know, mindset saying no to technology. That is over. You know, a technology culture was created by training and staff training centers on this technology, installed like web centers, securing cloud computing services, then started applying one by one. So we have started in a big way, e-governance, e-education and research, e-admission and examination, e-finance, e-communication and services. But unfortunately, my feeling, I tell you, we have yet to transform ourselves to a fully professional-based management, introducing professional softwares. Now, e-governance towards paperless office, we got this particular software, what we call the DDFS. I tell you, this is a miracle software. Today, with a good quality smartphone, I can clear all my office files from anywhere in the world if internet is available. And also all the certificates. You know, the university produced 11 lakh graduates. And you know, during my term, I have signed more than 200,000 certificates. Today I can sign my certificates from this hall. That is the level of technology we have tried and we are trying to perfect. And this is the DDFS. This is how the files are coming just like mail. And we can clear all the files from anywhere. And then we have introduced this public portal for the people to know where the files are located and the orders archive we have created. We have created digital personal files for all the faculty members. We have started to introduce the e-tendering process for the pensioners board, for pensioners management, the alumni portal. We started this, you know, the University of Calicut. People who are closely watching the media may be knowing the noises in the University of Calicut. We have special problems. Kerala is a highly politically sensitive state, you all know, without any discipline. And politicians make the rule. They dictate terms. And you know, there was no discipline. The major challenge I had in my university was the indiscipline. I was compelled to introduce this. Perhaps this is the only university in my state that has introduced biometric punching machine for the staff, for the faculty, for the supporting staff, as well as the research scholars. You know, the research scholars, after getting the fellowship, they will be running away. They will never submit the thesis. We were compelled to introduce the biometric punching machine, but I am happy and I am fortunate nobody has killed me because of introducing all these for all the three people. Then we also introduced this CCTV because of the protection. You know, day before yesterday there was an order from the High Court to ensure police protection for the Vice Chancellor and his family in his home and his office and all the staff members. That is the type of political aggressiveness in the state. And I remember yesterday more than 200 police posts were there in the campus to ensure discipline. That is the type of atmosphere in our state. We have people from
High Court ordered that
to ensure police protection because you know 128 strikes in 38 months.
I am aware. I was there in Calicut for 5 years.
Yeah.
Director of the Calicut.
Yeah.
I am aware, but you know, this High Court order, did they, you know, issue the order saying that...
That's what I said. Yes, it was there day before yesterday. And we initiated this e-education and research. I want to know contribution from this group. We are looking for an integrated software for managing the e-education, integrating the students, the faculties, and the examination, the attendance management all together. We are looking for a professional software to address the issue of e-education. We are following the e-learning techniques and e-teaching techniques in a way using the MS Office software environment, but that is not enough. We need a much better professional software that can cater to the needs of all the heavy efforts in infusing technology in the campus. We got some recognitions. Last month, there was a Google Search Award for the University of Calicut. That is the world 4th rank in the world. I was surprised to receive that information from the BBC that the University of Calicut was the Google ranked the Calicut University as top 4 in the world. That must be a great recognition. We are very happy. That was excitement for us. And again, the university at the time of my joining 3 years back, it was 46 at all India level. So luckily, God blessed me to bring it to 26. That was a 20-point gain. And day before yesterday, the state government also gave us a second place in the e-government. These are the recognitions. But I believe, the foolproofing is still away. We have everything. We have resources. We have networking. We have servers. But our software system is inadequate, not professionally designed. Technical manpower is inadequate. The damage or the risk from the natural calamity, that is very much there. My worry, my family, my university, the largest university, occupying 40% of the state, holding 50% of the higher education, 5 districts, 3 plus 4, 7 lakhs of students, 444 colleges, all these numbers put together, I believe this technology, this e-technology is going to be of great importance to our university. We are looking at the developers, the software developers, the hardware developers, or the iCloud providers, or the iCloud plus software providers to extend help to us. Thank you very much. You have any question?
Thank you, Mr. Salam, for that insight. Thanks a lot. And now after this very insightful presentation of Mr. Salam, we will move on to our topic that we were discussing. Now I would request our industry presenters. First will be Supreet Nagaraju. He is the Sales Head, South India and Sri Lanka Education, Adobe Systems. Please join us on the dais and give his presentation.
Respected Vice Chancellors, education leaders, and my fellow colleagues from the industry. I represent Adobe and the education vertical of Adobe in the South Asia region. Well, the first and foremost topic that was given to us undoubtedly was the skill development and employability as an area, which was a clear fitment for us in this part of the world. While we have made tremendous progress in terms of impact in skilling and employability in various parts of the world, from 2 areas of specialization for Adobe, which is our leadership areas of digital media and digital marketing. Just to give you a quick glimpse in terms of what is the kind of impact worldwide, we have academic initiatives signed up across close to about 1 lakh plus institutions, which have about, I think 70% of them are universities, 10 to 20% of them are government-owned projects, ministry-owned projects, and the rest of them largely in the K-12 space. So, coming to the current topic and today's agenda, skilling and employability. So, what's the current scenario in our country and the neighboring countries, the SAARC countries? That's something that I'll touch upon. And we recently did a creative skill set survey commissioned along with Naukri.com. Some revelations around this area. What's Adobe doing in education? We're typically known as the PDF and the Photoshop shop. What are the other areas that we are touching upon? And quickly a summary of what do we have in store from skilling and employability perspective from an Indianized scenario standpoint. And then I'll open up for Q&As from each of you. So quick context setting to what I am going to discuss. It's a slightly different topic from most of you who have discussed here. Just spend a half a minute on this, and then I'll start off with my presentation. I will request each one of you to go through the slide. So it's a typical brain conflict that happens across, and this is a typical scenario that we have in our country, across multiple geographies, across multiple age brackets, across multiple backgrounds of societies that we have in and around our country, including our neighboring countries as well. Just to give you a quick glimpse of how our corporate culture is, and how our Indian students are also fitting into the corporate culture. So, if you look at it, typically, we have the left brain and the right brain, and we as Indians, I think I also take pride in it, largely are too good at the left side of the brain, which is your science, math, the logical aspect of it. And when it comes to creativity and innovation, I wouldn't say we're bad, but I think we lack it. We lack somewhere. And probably a combination of the left and the right hand side of the brain will have much better results. Let's see what are the typical barriers in this space across. Let me play a quick video to set some global context, and then I'll come to the Indian aspect of it as well. Oops, just a minute. That's the global edition of what we had, and typically if you look at the current market scenarios across, there have been a continuous change in the skill set demands across. What existed about 4 years ago doesn't exist right now, and what existed probably a quarter ago has got a lot more advanced in terms of the skill demand and the reskilling aspect of it. And if you look at the typical preparedness of IT or non-IT as a sector, the digital skill set is a must overall across. So there's no differentiation or you can't draw a thin line or even a small line across saying that, hey, this is required for a specific set of students or specific set of people who want to get into an industry as such. Hired worldwide as such.
Creativity on how hiring managers view creativity in job candidates revealed that 78% believe creativity is required for economic growth, and 85% believe creativity is valuable to society. But only 51% of hiring managers think businesses grasp the importance of creativity. So, are students ready for today's dynamic workplace? Would you believe that 7 in 10 hiring managers say no? They say that students are unprepared and lack the necessary skills for success. In the last 5 years, problem solving and creativity have gained the most value in driving salary increases. 88% of hiring managers say that new hires need to be tech savvy. 82% say the ability to communicate through digital and visual media is a must. And more than 3/4 of them agree that creativity is an essential skill. The vast majority of hiring managers, 94%, agree that creativity is key when evaluating job candidates. In fact, creative skills are preferred over conventional skills by a factor of more than 5 to 1. We want to know what you think. Share your ideas about helping the next generation prepare for the jobs of tomorrow. Post them on Twitter using hashtag #CreateEDU. And view the complete study on adobe.com.
Just to bring the Indian context to it, we did a quick survey on what are the key creative skill sets that are required in India. This spanned across about 250 plus hiring managers, that's the business leaders, and a large cross-section of the HR recruitment professionals across IT and non-IT organizations. And this is a very recent survey which ended in September this year. So let's take a quick look at what are the key revelations from this study that we did along with Naukri.com. So one of the most important aspects that came out were 5 of these pillars on which you have the essentials and the non-essentials or moderately required skill sets, more from the digital imaging or mobile app development aspect of it. But what has come across is that they all have a clear-cut requirement of knowledge in upwards of about 40 to 50%. So we also figured out what was the average entry-level position closure timeline. We have a deadline for every hiring manager to look at what kind of entry-level students can be hired. So the expectation is less than 15 days. But if you can take a look at the survey, majority of them have slipped over. And let's take a look at why they slipped. So one of the key important things is that we have a challenge with respect to finding the right talent pool. Why? More important than anything is the fact that lack of technical competencies, lack of available applicants, either in the form of knowledge that are they the right fitment into those roles, or it could be in any other format of communication which they might otherwise would have missed out, right? So a quick look at what are the kind of skill sets, what percentage of them are in demand from an Adobe Creative product skill sets perspective. About 51% of them are 51+% are actually in demand in this industry, both in the digital media and the marketing aspect of it, which span across the design, web and the video product lines across. And what kind of industry requirement do we have from a certifications perspective? And 70% of them agree that yes, it is required, it is essential across. So the demand for creative professionals in the next coming years would exceed in excess of 80%. This includes the within India requirement and the outsourcing services that a lot of IT and non-IT services companies are looking at. So to quickly summarize, we have a vast majority of the Adobe digital and the creative skill sets in demand in high ratios, and then we have 2/3 of them finding it very difficult to find the right set of skill sets across. So moving on quickly, a quick introduction to what Adobe is doing in education, and then what do we bring to the table from a university standpoint if you were to look at adopting these set of solutions across.
Today, it's not about what you know.
It's about what you make.
What you invent.
What you design. What you build. It's about ideas.
It's about creativity.
We need new ideas.
We need to work together.
And it's gonna be a challenge.
Creativity is about storytelling. And expression.
And passion.
And heart.
Now creativity is digital.
There are entire generations that have grown up in a digital world.
Creativity is more important than ever, but the tools have changed.
Students and teachers are doing amazing things in science,
In business.
in medicine,
In education. And in things we haven't even thought of yet. Digital expression is the new literacy.
and creativity is the new fluency. Learn the tools.
Learn the tools.
Learn the tools.
Because creativity isn't an elective anymore. It's our future.
So, Adobe's leadership, as I mentioned, spans across the Adobe's digital media line of it and the digital marketing aspect of it. Just to quickly give you a glimpse of what digital marketing from Adobe does. We have the content creation piece of it, and then we look at personalization, analytics, which is one of the biggest piece in that space, and largely look at integrating that with the social media and looking at monetizing it through the test and target mode. And the first piece, first two cogs of the wheel that I mentioned, content creation and content personalization, as a huge component of our Creative Cloud product lines. And then moving quickly on to what do we have specifically from a university standpoint, higher education standpoint. We have an initiative which is called as a Creative Technology Academy, which largely focuses on doing a model which has got the curriculum being shared across with the universities and the higher educational institutions through our Education Exchange program, which is one of the largest social media platform on this planet. It's got total membership base of about 25 million faculty members across different verticals. We do train the trainer models, and then we also have an enterprise agreement model in terms of offering the educational softwares at a very nominal cost. And we cover the entire curriculum set, which focuses on the digital design, digital video, and the design aspect of it. It also has e-learning, which is not currently projected in this slide. From a student's perspective, we look at certifications focusing on various tracks, which have a large portion of digital design, video, and various sets of media tools. Now, the next question with respect to how do we ensure that these set of talent are projected into the outside world? How do we look at encouraging them to look at entrepreneurship as an area? So Adobe recently acquired a company called as Behance, which is a LinkedIn equivalent in the creative world, which is one of the world's largest networks available both for creative professionals and for organizations who are looking at creative professionals across. So this is one area that we've worked very closely with, and educational institutions do get an access to this portal as part of the overall academy offering. And it also has a recent addition of jobs in the space, and India recently accounted for approximately about 8% of the subscribers on this website. So let's give a quick glimpse on who are the enterprise level relationships that Adobe has worldwide and also from an India standpoint. So we have 90% of every single industry vertical on a very large investment, both in terms of monetization as well as human resource on Adobe. Be it a banking sector, be it a media and entertainment, be it a telecom, be it a government, or be it even universities from world over. As you can see, we have some of the best universities from worldwide as a customer base for the last 10 plus years. From an India standpoint, we have some of the biggies in the IT sector. We have Indian Air Force, we have the .coms, we have even the airlines who are part of this. From a universities and higher education and vocational education perspective, we have some of the largest institutions here. We also have schools who are part of this initiatives across. So the last piece I'd like to highlight upon from our creativity and inculcating the creative curriculum across various institutions would be that we have a Adobe Education Leadership Program wherein we encourage a lot of faculty members across to collaborate and bring together their best in the creative ecosystem. I'm around and I'm happy to share what we can do to help elevate the overall ecosystem of your university or the higher education as such. And we also have many other solutions from a documentation perspective and administrative angle, which most of the vice chancellors were requesting. I'll restrict the current slides across only to the skilling and employability space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sukhpreet, for that presentation. Now, quickly we'll go ahead and call our next guest. It's Dr. Paresh Joshi, Academy Director, Station E-Language Lab.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Incidentally, we have just one lady and a lot of gentlemen here. I represent Station E-Language Laboratory. It's promoted by Station E Info Services Private Limited. And I'm going to discuss skills development initiatives for boosting employability. Incidentally, to share a secret, before we gave me the mic, putting the mic off, he asked me a question, how many minutes are going to take? And I would demonstrate my time management skills. I would keep myself as brief as I can. I would not overshoot 15 minutes. That's something that I've set for myself. And that brings instant smiles on the faces sitting here. Thank you very much for those smiles. This is an interesting statement with which I begin what I have to say. It was a document published by World Bank. Very interestingly, it says that as countries become richer and move up the value-added chain, the skill development requirements would change, and then there would be requirements on, a high cognitive skills like analytical skills, problem solving, and communication skills, and other behavior skills such as discipline and work effort. I think for India as a country, we are looking at economic growth, and for us, this probably is the context. We would require skills which fall into high cognitive skills and behavior skills if we want to see that the productivity increases. A global scenario, when we look at, there is a dearth of skilled workforce. Every single country is facing this problem. As we're growing, as technology is growing, as the world is becoming more and more competent, this issue of skilled workforce is everyone's problem, and we'll have to agree to this. There are some exceptions when we look at it. South Korea, Finland, Singapore especially have invested a huge amount of resources to ensure that skills development is integrated into mainstream education. And they're getting the dividend of the effort that they have put in. As against that, when we look at in the Indian context, we have as many as 48% of employers who are struggling to get skilled workforce. And this is where the problem is. I think we will have to think about promoting our skill development initiatives. When we start looking at skills development in India, I seriously feel it is a notion where everyone agrees to do something for skills development. It is a notion agreed upon but not acted upon. And there's so much of growth in education. We are expanding as far as education is concerned. A lot of self-finance institutions are coming up and they're improving the quality of education which is delivered in India. We would hear about some wonderful initiatives in hybrid pedagogy and all that. But look at this second point that I'm mentioning here. It is a startling statistics that says, it was given by McKinsey. And this is something where I want all my senior friends to have a look at, because most of you are representing universities. In conventional education or in conventional degree, the employment ratio or the graduates in conventional degree, they are what employment ready are as less as 10%, and that scene improves partially when you go to the technical education, that goes to 15%. Now that means 80%, 85% of our youth which comes out of the higher education are not ready, for employment. They need some training to be able to have, a sensible job done to the given table, to the given role within an organization. I could move on to the next interesting slide. Status of skill development in India. As I was saying, on one side we have startling revelations which say that our graduates are not employable. On the other side, it is a priority, as I said, which is agreed upon. Each one of us talk about skills development. There was not a single presentation here which did not have skill development as one of the areas discussed, if not the central area. But then what are we actually doing? I have a humble submission to all my senior academic here, that we will need to bring the skills development education in the mainstream, in the curriculum. A lot of us try and give skills development when, for example, students are completing their engineering degree. A 15-day workshop is given for developing communication skills. Now, how a student who has struggled to communicate throughout the tenure of his education is going to have, enhanced communication skills in a 15-day or 15-hour-long workshop? I think we will have to start integrating it into the classroom. The students should be aware in the first place. Skills development is a priority, as I said. Skills development has till date remained on the periphery, and that is something that we'll have to accept. We have still not been able to integrate skills development in the curriculum. It remains an add-on, it remains as an add-on course given not by all of the universities. Very few universities probably do this. In order to boost employability, skills development has to be integrated into everyday experience of the students. It has to come to the classroom. It has to come to the classroom along with the core skills which are given or imparted within the campus. Universities, IITs, IIMs and other institutions of repute will have to take a lead here. They'll have to bring this skills development in the mainstream of the education, in the everyday discussion on the classroom, and that is how they'll play the leading role. Students should be educated about the need of the skills development at the outset at the academic program. A lot of times the students themselves are not aware that they require the skills. They say, give us degrees and we want to go and have employment. A lot of them don't even turn up on the campus, forget about skills development. They don't even want to have education in the classroom. And they say, if you give us degrees, we're happy home. We don't want to get the trouble of listening to our teachers sitting in the classroom. Students' profiling should be carried out at the commencement of a program, and skills deficits should be arrested at the beginning rather than at the end. That's something I referred. Here, the government also has its role. These skills development programs should be generously funded, and rather than red tape, a red carpet approach should be followed. Followed for the skills development. The role of universities. This is where we, as the skills development solutions providers, would request to the university vice chancellor sitting here. We can establish skills development centers on the university campuses, and we have done it. We have done it with GNLU, Gujarat National Law University. We have done it with Kota University, Rajasthan. There is an NIT, for example, National Institute of Technology, UP, Arunachal Pradesh. We have established the skills development center. So universities will have to take lead, and establish skills development center on the campuses, make it available to the students. Along with this, universities should then, guide colleges affiliated to the university to establish such skills development center. This top-bottom approach probably would gradually bring skills development in the mainstream education. The various courses on various skills should be offered. If we want to integrate skills development in the mainstream education, it would not happen without integrating technology and innovation. We'll have to see that the skills development programs are offered with a technology supported approach and innovative pedagogy should support these initiatives. 21st century skills. Now this is very interesting. Recommendation of key competences for life learning adopted by European Parliament and Council in December 2006. After 5 years of work by experts and civil servants collaborating with an open method of cooperation, it defines 8 key competences, and I'll quickly refer to that. Communications in mother tongue, communication in a foreign language, in Indian case it would be English, mathematical competence and basic competence in science and technology, digital competence, learning to learn, social and civic competence, sense of initiative and entrepreneurship, cultural awareness and expansion. Now, to conclude, I would simply say that, it's not enough talking about skills development. We will have to bring it to the implementation, and if we want to see that, this demographic dividend that we're poised at the moment, we all talk about it and we know it. If this demographic dividend needs to be, if we want to leverage this demographic dividend, we will have to integrate skills training, skills education in mainstream education. Otherwise, it will become a demographic disaster. If universities require some corporate presence on the campuses for skills development, we're there. We've established as many as 30 skills development centers across 15 states in schools, colleges, ITIs, universities, NITs. With this, I'll conclude. If there's a question, I'd love to respond to that. I'm sure there won't be any question because we're all rushing forward. That is how I have a hurried session. But in case there is a question, I would love to respond to that.
There is no doubt what you said is right. But
Thank you.
beyond that, there is one more thing that corporates have understood. The fundamentals of students are almost rich. So what we need are good teachers first.
All right, sir.
Schools. And it starts from there, and then the students who need to be, add skills to whatever. And that is what we have.
But it's the good teachers who will give you those skills. What is happening is that, of course, it may not even be in the curriculum. But even if it's in the curriculum, if you do not have good methods of imparting learning, then these things will never be acquired.
It goes together.
In fact, what we do is, we just don't establish a center, we also train human resource. I mean, we have a stall here, I will not take much time explaining what we are. We're right there, we can have a longer deliberation on how skills development initiatives can be implemented on the universities. Thank you all very much. Yes, sir.
How come our courses yesterday, skill oriented, suddenly they have become non-skill, and there is a supplementary requirement of skill training.
True.
The mainstream doesn't offer. The one comment from me is there's only one reason. These skill sets and the quality are synonymous.
Okay.
When the mainstream quality goes down, and naturally skill sets scarcity comes up. So therefore, it should be more by the practice, how you practice the education, the academic systems. Every laboratory can be innovation driving.
True.
And every laboratory report tells about how to report, how to write reports. When it is done meaningfully, it is so. In fact, if you talk about a typical engineering curriculum has silently all these features inbuilt into it. When the meaning of the curriculum is lost, the delivery is made with quality lost, all these deficiencies would come up, and a supplementary training on skill sets would come up. And how long would be the supplementary training? If you leave a 4-year engineering program and the practice and skill training in a 4-year period, and trying to, you mentioned about 50 is very correct, that's what colleges do. And let's say somebody like you coming up and say 4 months, it would be a little more better one, no doubt. what should be done is the whole delivery of the system should be changed. And that's what we try to do in our universities with partial success.
In fact, when we interact with the university officials, we request them to integrate it in a way that there are credits associated. If it is an add-on program, students are not really interested.
I would say that it is already integrated. Please do practice.
You see, it is partially integrated, I would say. So I would not agree saying that it is already integrated.
One point.
Yes, sir.
Because you are talking about 3 or 4 months training, I think, instead of calling yourself a skill development center, I think better you should call it as skill honing center.
Skill?
Honing
center. Alright. I will take that as a suggestion.
Because unless the person is there, he is oriented, then only, unless he has something in him, then only he can hone the skills. That's what I mean.
There is one skill, like the domain skills and the application of the domain.
True.
A mechanical engineer, when he becomes a mechanical engineer, what kind of capabilities, skills does he have? Does he have machine design capabilities or only maintenance capabilities? And this kind of skills are not being talked about, unfortunately, because most of the recruiters in the institutes have been IT-centric. So therefore, many of them are getting carried away by the IT centricity. And as a result, the domain skills are forgotten. And the domain skills become, are even also lost in this, are also lost in the presentations.
What we're proposing actually is, for example, core skills are given. I mean, without that, an engineer is not an engineer. But this engineer is...
Unfortunately, that's grossly missing these days in many of the colleges.
True, but like, for example, let's take an ex-engineer who has core skills, excellent core skills. If he's a mechanical engineer, he knows, the machines and how to fix them. But he's going to face an interview. He fails to present those skills. These skills would remain inside the box. It's not going to come out.
Very rarely, I would put it this way. If he has trained himself to be good in domain, I'm sure the offshoots of domain, which would provide the communication skills, etc., would also be developed in most of the cases, with barring a few exceptions.
Our research
basically, therefore, quality, synonymous to quality.
I beg to differ. Yeah, I'm not so sure of that, sir. I beg to differ.
Because it doesn't happen, sir. It doesn't happen. You will have a lot of very talented...
Let me just narrate a quick experience, sir, with the greatest of respect to all institutions. I took 50 IIT Delhi students when Chandrayaan had been launched.
Okay, sir.
And I asked them a simple question. Do you have any idea how you can compute what path orbit Chandrayaan should take? They're totally clueless. Totally clueless. That's the sense of skills we do not have.
True. Yeah, so it means that his actually domain knowledge, the physics he learned, the mathematics he learned, is for exam and not for really learning. So therefore, it proves that though they are from IITs, so they're the domain knowledge.
True. The moral of the story is the core skills and the soft skills will have to join hands.
Yes.
Any one of these two skills on the higher end is not going to solve the problem. There has to be a proper amalgamation of the two. And if that needs to be done, we've been doing a lot of job there. We will be happy to do it for any university. Thank you very much, Mr. K.
Full presentation and discussion. Now, coming up to the last presentation of the day, we will be with Professor Dr. R. Perulasamy, Vice Chancellor, Nurul Islam Center of Higher Education. Perulasamy.
Greetings from Nurul Islam University, Kanyakumari district in Tamil Nadu. On behalf of our Unit Chancellor, Dr. Majid Khan, I take this opportunity to thank the Department of Information Technology, Government of Tamil Nadu and other organizations for having invited me to share my experiences, knowledge, skill and other initiatives to boost employability at E-India 2014 event. it gives me immense pleasure to congratulate the department and other organizations for having arranged this program. It's a very unique and also a wonderful event here. Most of us are under the impression that the purpose of education is to provide job opportunities. It may be instantly true that the purpose of education is to get jobs. Education, to my mind, does not mean imbibing of mere knowledge and skill. Knowledge and skill are interrelated. And knowledge and skill are the driving forces of economic growth and also social developments for any country or any nation. There are so many skills, as our Honorable Vice Chancellor have rightly pointed out. There's a soft skill, hard skill, and life skill, communication skill, employability skill, corporate skill, and we can behavioral skill, problem solving skill. We can say a number of skills, and all these skills will help the students to develop their appropriate strategies for their personality. The purpose of education is learning to learn, learning to relearn, learning to unlearn, learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, learning to be kind. Kindness is the language which even the blind can see and the deaf can hear. Education is not the answer to all questions, but education is the means to answer to all questions. Education is very important in teaching the students the past and also helping them make knowledgeable decisions for the future. To make our children capable of honesty is the beginning of education. Our education should be based on morally good characteristics and also leadership qualities among the students to bring revolutionary changes in the function of the society. We can very well quote Swami Vivekananda's famous quote, "We want the education by which character is formed, the strength of the mind is increased, the intellect is expanded, and by which one can stand on his own feet." It is also a well-known fact that almost all the countries are built on educational institutions. And education is the key for a socio-economic development of a country. Education to the women and the youth is an asset to the nation. You know that we are living in knowledge era. Knowledge is power. The present society is described knowledge society. Knowledge advances not by leaps but by steps. But at the same time, simplicity and humility is the need of the hour. The secret of success lies in remaining simple, humble, and flexible. The success depends on building the right move to the right direction. The self-confidence is the foundation for all success and achievements. And it is also a well-known fact that we are living in the globalization. Quality is playing a very major role in the context of globalization. There is no doubt that the word quality has become the watchword of higher education. Our India's problem is not unemployment, but unemployability. To be very precise, our higher education has to be altered to make our students capable of getting attractive jobs in the global markets. Now, skills and knowledge are the divine force of economic growth and the social development for any country. Countries with higher and better levels of skills adjust more effectively to the challenges and opportunities of world of work. As India moves progressively towards becoming a knowledge economy, it becomes increasingly important that the country should focus on advancement of skills, and these skills have to be relevant to the emerging economic environment. In order to achieve the twin targets of economic growth and industrial development, India's gross domestic product has to grow constantly at 8% to 9% per annum. This requires significant progress in several areas, including infrastructure development, agricultural growth, coupled with the productivity improvements, financial sector growth, a healthy business environment, ably supported by a skilled workforce. To make skill development initiatives to improve employability, we need to identify the major deficiencies in the present scenario. The major deficiencies are low-level academic accomplishment, poorly motivated graduates, mostly conceptual and theoretical curricula, lack of work-based and work-related curriculum. Hence, part of this problem stems from an imbalance between country's education system and employment markets. These skills the youth need to secure employment are not the skills that they have developed through traditional education and vocational training. Secondary education is often designed as a stepping stone to higher education, yet globally, the transition rate from secondary to tertiary level is low, meaning that most students enter the labor force directly from the secondary level. While some skills assessed at the secondary level, such as language, are very relevant to employability, curricula often lack any specific orientation toward directly preparing students for informal or formal employment. Technical and vocational education is considered a better option for students seeking immediate employment, but in India, DVT continues to the segmentation and the curriculum is not aligned with the skills demanded by a fast-paced economy. These basic skills which are required for employment, there are cognitive, which include skills such as numeracy and literacy. Technical as computer or technological competencies are non-cognitive skills including traits like leadership and capacity for teamwork. You must be trained, the youth must be trained on these basic skill sets to find and retain employment, and education and the training programs must find effective ways to develop these traits in youth. However, in the context of today's rapidly evolving global economy, non-cognitive skills have emerged as those most highly demanded by employers. Informal and formal employers in India have identified skills such as openness to learning, global work habits, and also entrepreneurship as critical for successful employment, and these skills are associated with higher wages. Unlike more discussed skills, non-cognitive skills and also provide a platform for youth to acquire additional skills, for example, by enabling better on-the-job training capacity. To address youth unemployment, policymakers and industry must find ways to foster skills at the secondary level that match real-world labor market needs. Providing students with opportunities to undertake work-related training is the next key component in enhancing employability. Developing strategic relationships with employees and also professional bodies creates opportunities for students to undertake work placements, become involved in relationship and also participate in field work and campus-based work-related learning. Including variety of learning experiences and assessment tasks into the curriculum helps to improve the learning experience and also exposure. Creating links between subject disciplines and the work-based employers and professional bodies ensure the progression of students' skills during the course of study. There is a need for an independent system to assess quality, comprising all the elements of the skill development value chain, right from need assessment and also student mobilization up to training and replacement. Current systems are primarily oriented towards quality checks during the phase of assessment and certification. Formation of institutional mechanism for content formation, delivery and assessment is required. As the demand for training grows, there will be a cascading impact on the demand for current standardized process for training, delivery, uniform assessment and practices. This will provide the demand for trainees and assessors, which will be a critical bottleneck as other pieces of the ecosystem fall in places. Furthermore, there will be a need for standards and quality process, quality system formation, quality assessment, quality certification training, process certification as the demand for training grows rapidly. There will be required institutional mechanism specifying of quality standards and practices. Skills and knowledge are the driving forces of economic growth and social development for any country. For the economy to grow at 8% to 9%, it is required that the secondary and tertiary sectors grow at 10% to 11%, assuming agriculture grows at 4%. In such a scenario, it is obvious that a large portion of the workforce would migrate from the primary sector agriculture to the secondary and tertiary sectors. However, the skill sets that are required in the manufacturing and service sectors are quite different from those in the agriculture sector. This implies that there will be a large skill gap which such a migration occurs, as evidenced by a shrinking employment in the agriculture sector. The scenario and the necessities, these scenario necessitates skill development in the workforce. India is expected to be home to a skilled workforce of 500 million by 2022. About 12 million persons are expected to join the workforce every year. The talent pool needs to be adequately skilled. The following sectors are expected to drive the growth of the economy as well as play a significant role in employment. Auto and auto components, building and construction materials, building and construction, real estate services, electronics and IT hardware, education and skill development services, food processing, health care, textiles, leather and leather goods, tourism and hospitality, transportation and logistics, media and entertainment. To achieve this significance of skill development as well as the quantum of funding is also required. There is also the overarching need for quality structures to be in place, especially from the perspective of successful implementation. Such quality standards and the process are required at all segments of the skill development value chain. This has to be complemented by linking funding to outcomes as well as incentives to good performance. In the context of achieving the necessary scale and speed, the following solutions would be the way ahead in providing a conducive environment for India to meet its skill development goals, targeting skill development at all levels of the skill pyramid, implementing vocational education in schools, creating a large talent pool through modular employable skills, ensuring quality in delivery, employing technology to achieve scale and speed, formation of institutional mechanism for current formation, delivery and assessment, expecting the formation of sector skill councils, setting up a national human resource market information systems. Respected professors, these are the ways and means to boost the employability. And also, once again, I take this opportunity to thank the government of Kerala for just having given me a chance of being with you today. And also, I am very particular to refer to Swami Vivekananda's famous quote, all the powers are within you. You can do anything and everything. Believe in that. Once again, I take this opportunity to thank not only the Department of Science, Department of Information and Technology, Government of Kerala, and also other organizations who have helped us to organize this conference here. Once again, thank you to all.
Thank you, sir. And now quickly, just to wind up the whole thing, I would request Father Paul Fernandez to just give away the mementos to our speakers who are present there right now. It will be Supreet Nagaraju from South India and Sri Lanka Education Adobe Systems. Let's give him a round of applause, everyone. Perumal Sami, Vice Chancellor, Nurul Islam Center of Higher Education. Dr. Paresh Joshi, Academic Director, Stationery Language Lab. I think he's not there. And we had missed on one of our presenters there. So, for a role of technology in redefining examination management, Narendra Kumar, Director, Orient India System Private Limited. Yeah, and Govind, who actually gave that presentation, very delightful, and it was energetic. So for Govind, who gave this presentation. And our dinner will start at 7:15 in the exhibition area. So our session will conclude, and tomorrow morning 9:30 will start. So 7:15 exhibition area, the dinner starts.
We are having
Stairs, so you are invited to join that track, and dinner will start at 7:15 at the exhibition area. Thank you.